All right, well, we'll get the show on the road, so to speak. Let me welcome everyone again. For those of you that I don't know, my name is Adam Pearl. I'm President and CEO of ArtPride New Jersey. It's great to have so many of our friends from around the state on the call with us today. As I scroll through this list of names, I wish I was all seeing you and and being in the same place with you. But hopefully, this can be helpful to you regardless, and lots of new faces and names as well. And we have a ton of information this morning to get to you and quite the special guests. So I will just say at the top, in terms of housekeeping, if this is your first time joining ArtPride or a Zoom webinar, at the bottom of the screen, you have the Q&A and the chat features, which I encourage you to use. Chat, you can send messages to the entire group or to each other. And with the Q&A, you can ask questions, which we can either respond directly to you if it's something simple and direct, or we can choose to answer live. In weeks past, we've been answering questions and answers along the way, but given the amount of information and with the hope to have a little bit more conversation, we're gonna hope that you ask questions along the way, and we may hold some of them a little bit. So just be patient with us. And I want to thank everyone, both the folks on the call today, our panelists. We have, of course, Anne-Marie Miller, our Director of Public Policy and Advocacy, and Jim Atkinson, our Director of Programs and Services, running things behind the scenes. And I can see on the list of participants all of the ArtPride staff and many board members, and so many of our members and friends and advocates from around the state. So thank you to everyone. We are really working together, and that's a lot. And we truly appreciated ArtPride, all of the support and all of the response. So with that, I'll send it over to Anne-Marie. Anne-Marie, I don't know if you could see, but your screen is dark right now.
No, this is like, how's that?
No. You have your share screens up, but your video, I can't see.
No, no video. We're just gonna move forward. Okay.
All right, so, you go. I'm turning video off.
That's okay. So there's a lot here today, and we're going to run over on time. And I'm just going to remind everybody that all of this content's going to be available online after. So if you see a lot of words, you can consult back after. And of course, that's why I put what's new this week. My bread, actually third time, actually works. So sourdough bread rose and is for breakfast today. I want to welcome everybody, as Adam did, and what's new in New Jersey. PPP is the second round, as we talked about last week. These numbers are actually updated. There are over 100,000 loans made as of Friday, May 8th. So we know that everybody's accessing this. Please keep us posted if you're having trouble. In New Jersey, we also have a Restart and Recovery Advisory Council that the governor has put together. And for the arts on the council, which is the high level, shorter, actually smaller group of advisors, Evelyn Colbert, who is the chair of Montclair Film, is on that committee. She actually had her first meeting yesterday. And on the subgroup, which is broken into smaller committees, the arts representatives on that for entertainment and tourism are John Schreiber of NJPAC and Kevin O'Brien, who's one of our state arts council members, representing his job on IATSE. So we're happy to have that representation as recovery is being considered. Something that came up this week in New Jersey as well is that the Department of Banking and Insurance is providing premium reductions. So you can see the list there, everything from passenger automobile insurance to commercial liability insurance. So that provision during this COVID period for premium reductions. Our state continues to face a large budget shortfall, over 10 billion or close to 10 billion over 2 years, which is concerning us all in terms of where the state arts funding is going to land. So we're keeping a very close eye on that, and we'll keep alerting you as to what you can do to make sure that the arts are included as they should be in the governor's budget and as he has proposed. On yesterday's legislative session, a bill allowing a New Jersey gross income tax deduction for charitable contributions passed through the Senate. You might remember when Senator Kane was at one of our previous webinars, he spoke about this. The bill has passed through the Senate. However, there is no assembly version, so it needs to go to committee and through the assembly before it can go to the governor. We will keep information on this on the ArtPride website as well so that you can advocate for that. Just something you already know, but the Federal Reserve Bank of Philadelphia posts arts, entertainment, and recreation as one of the hardest hit industries by COVID. And if you look at the second graph there, in terms of employment affected by COVID, arts, entertainment, and recreation are at the top. This is something that Nina's going to talk about in terms of the $3 trillion coronavirus relief package being proposed and voted on today in the House. That includes 10 million more for the NEA and NEH, and then more funding on a local and state level, which we know in New Jersey, if it's based on population, COVID load, and unemployment, our governor is counting on that money. And has been to Washington talking to the president about that. I want to introduce our special guest today, Nina Ozlu Tunceli. I have known Nina and admired her for many, many years. Nina is our guiding light on arts policy and advocacy strategy. I'm so glad she agreed to join us this morning and to update us on policy on the HEROES Act being voted on today and how our sector can stay on the minds of our policymakers. So I am going to turn it over to Nina.
Thank you very much, Anne Marie. Last night I was watching some TV with Andy Cohen, and Stephen Colbert was on the show, and he is dedicated to making the perfect sourdough bread. So if I were you, I would tag him and send him a picture of your sourdough bread and your recipe, and perhaps all of us for that matter. So thank you, everyone. I'm very happy to be here. I wear two hats. I'm the Chief Counsel at Americans for the Arts, and I'm the Executive Director of the Americans for the Arts Action Fund. As you know, I hope you know, you can join for free at the Arts Action Fund, and we've been working very closely with Anne Marie for, personally, I've been probably working with her for decades. In any case, I know that Anne Marie has filled you in a lot with tapping funds for the CARES Act. Americans for the Arts and the Action Fund have been working really hard lobbying Congress to get a lot of those funds that got passed on March 27th and got replenished on April 21st. The first slide she put up there showed some office hours. For the last 6 weeks on a daily basis, I've been doing office hours for the field to help artists tap pandemic unemployment compensation and paycheck protection programs, EIDL loans for arts organizations and PPPs, tapping CDBG funds, and the list goes on. I've created a table that is quite comprehensive of the two forms of that CARES Act. You can find it at the artsactionfund.org, and then you just put /CARES Act table. And it is a 9-page document that literally breaks down all the ways that you can tap CARES Act, whether you are an individual artist, gig artist, a self-employed artist, a nonprofit arts organization, a governmental agency, a for-profit arts-related organization, or just an individual taxpayer. Everything from student loans to your IRS rebates to PPP. Part that I like the most is on page 8 of that document. It is a 9-page document, keep in mind, but it's done in a table, so it's easy to get through. And on page 8 are my most up-to-date favorite FAQ links. And the top one there, anyone who's involved with PPP loans, I really recommend you print that out or at least save it as a favorite because it's always being updated. And what it is the FAQs that are being released by the Treasury Department almost on a weekly basis on how to apply, how to get forgiven, all those kind of things on the PPP loan. And they updated it again just this week. So I am constantly updating it on the FAQ. The URL never changes for it. Again, it's on page 8 of that chart. and it's the first item there. There will be more to come because the final rulings on forgiveness haven't come out yet, but we have some more guidance. Along those lines, this week, the House of Representatives in Congress in Washington, D.C., released something called the HEROES Act, which is kind of like CARES Act 3. But this one is generated out of the House, so they got to put their own name on it. The other two bills originated out of the Senate, and then they added House perspectives, and it ended up being the CARES Act. So this is called the HEROES Act. It has come out very quickly, and there aren't a lot of members actually to vote on it. So one of the first things that they're going to do in Congress is pass a rule that allows every one member to be able to represent 10 other members' ability to cast a vote the way that they would like, which is a big deal, brand new to Congress, never happened before. If that gets passed, which is very likely, it will then lead the way for passing the larger HEROES Act bill. I'm seeing in the chat room somebody would like me to repeat the URL for that CARES Act table, and I don't want you to worry that I'm not going to tell you, so I'm going to tell you now. It's www.artsactionfund.org/CARES Act table, all one word. Okay. Adam, did you want to tell me something? Okay.
No, I was coming on to tell you that you're dynamite. You're all over it. I'm going to get out of your way.
Okay. Okay, so the HEROES Act. Before I tell you all the goodies that are inside of it, I want you to know that it is not going to pass as is in the Senate. There is as you know, the House of Representatives is controlled by Democrats, and the US Senate is controlled by Republicans. And from the White House to Senator McConnell, who's the majority leader in the Senate, the constant reverberating chatter is, let's put a pause on things. Let's see how things are doing. We're not ready to keep putting money in. Despite the Federal Reserve Chairman saying, give more money and relief because the economy is about to really go under. So I think that there is going to be some kind of compromise that happens, but I just want you to know that the things I tell you that are in the HEROES Act, you can't rely on as if it's law, but we can all act together to lobby to get it through if you like those components. And we work with Anne Marie on that, and she'll I'm sure send you an action alert related to that. First up is this HEROES bill is a relief fund for state and local governments and their employees. Previous to this, the CARES Act has been giving money for specifically health-related issues for COVID-19 for the state and local governments to do everything from testing, PPE, things like that. And there was a little bit of economic relief, but it was very programmatic. It's not that kind of essentially money to help you retain your own employees and programs and be able to replenish, make sure that your pension plans don't go under, things like that. So there's $875 billion for that. About $500 billion of it is going to be for states. $375 billion is going to be for locals. It's in everybody's interest to make sure that these state and local governments get their money, because if they start making cuts, remember what will be the first to go? Arts funding. So it's in all of our interests to have that kind of money go into state and local governments. Next, related to the PPP program, they don't, in this HEROES Act yet, they don't replenish money for it, but there's still over $100 billion available for you to apply. But what they would do is set aside specifically enough funds for nonprofit organizations to be able to ensure they get the funds. And it does lift the 500-person requirement just for nonprofits. So that might apply to a couple of your cultural institutions in New Jersey. The other thing it does is that it extends the 8-week program to be able to use the funds all the way through the end of December if you want. Another big piece is that it does replenish $10 billion into the SBA EIDL loan program, which has been very popular with giving out advances that are grants. It also extends the pandemic unemployment compensation. This is a big deal because at the moment, it's a lot of money that goes out on a weekly basis, especially for those that apply. Many of you, I'm sure, have already been educated on the fact that self-employed workers can now do both. You have two bites of the apple. You can apply for pandemic unemployment, or you can position yourself as a business and apply for a PPP. Just don't get both at the same time. But what's nice is that if you could do your PPP first, the pandemic unemployment, if it's passed in the HEROES Act, would extend beyond the last week of July, which is when it's currently set to end in terms of funding resources, and would go all the way through January 2021, which is quite significant. It gives a lot of peace of mind to a lot of individuals who are worried that they're not going to be able to go up and running in time. So again, this is on the HEROES wish list, but it's not enacted into law yet, but that's something that we would all like to see. Additionally, those that work with community development blocks, I've been doing a lot of advising to groups on arts groups tapping that for job training programs, repurposing of jobs. The community development block grant got $5 billion in the last round of CARES Act. This time it's going to get $15 billion. This is part of that state and local government funds that I talked about as a gross amount that they're going to be getting. But that's a key amount because arts organizations have done very well in being able to work with their state and local governments to use some of those funds for the arts. Another big thing is the Main Street Lending Program. In the HEROES Act, it mandates that a portion of it needs to be used to give to nonprofit organizations. That is a big turnaround from the current version of the CARES Act, which did not allow it for nonprofit organizations to be involved. And then a couple of other nice things are for your cultural organizations that are self-employed insurers that weren't paying into the state unemployment insurance program. What you would have to do is pay the 50% of the self-employed insurance, and under the CARES Act, you're getting reimbursed. And that was a hardship for a lot of organizations during this pandemic. And what the HEROES Act would do is it would tell the states, don't collect that portion, that 50% portion from the the self-insured employer. Instead, just only take 50%, the part that they're required to give, and then the part that the federal government was going to reimburse with the CARES Act, it's just a wash because you don't have to pay it anymore. I believe, was causing some consternation for some groups. On an individual level, for those of you who have children and you weren't able to get stimulus rebate funds for those kids that were over the age of 17, this HEROES Act would retroactively give you an additional $500 per child for those that were over 17 but under 25 that are considered dependents on your IRS return, which is a nice thing. And then finally, a very nice thing that I think is very important for New Jersey is that the HEROES Act eliminates the SALT tax, which is the state and local tax deduction cap. This was a huge deal last year during the Tax Reform Act. A lot of states that have high property tax, those residents were limited on the amount of property tax they could take off on their Schedule A deductions. And this is a huge deal if they totally eliminate the SALT tax. And we're going to see a lot of moderate Republicans, those in New Jersey, New York, who are going to vote for this HEROES Act, which they normally would not have on a party line vote, but they're going to vote for it just because of that clause. And I think I'll pause there. I think I've used my 10 minutes.
No, thank you, Nina. I don't know if there are any questions for Nina right now.
There's a couple here that I think might make sense to add, and there's actually just two, literal couple. So Nina, we have one here that says from Linda. It says, are you aware of any way to follow up on EIDL application? We applied 4 weeks ago and haven't heard anything. All we have is a confirmation number.
Yeah. So what happened with EIDL? So you did apply 4 weeks ago, which is good. You're in the queue. So what happened is the Treasury Department, it wasn't mandated by Congress, but they chose when the CARES Act got replenished with more funds for EIDL and other programs, they added a clause to allow agricultural businesses to also apply for these EIDL loans. They were previously prevented from being able to do it. So the Treasury Department chose and interpreted that to give them priority of funding in the second round of EIDL. It's probably going to be contested, but in the meantime, the way it's working is your application is in the queue, but what they're doing is first handling all of the agricultural business applications for EIDL, and then they're going to return to the queue. And I think that you're probably going to be okay, especially knowing that there is interest from Congress for replenishing more the EIDL program, that once it does get replenished or once they finish processing the agricultural business applications and there's still money left, they will follow a first come, first serve basis and process those applications. You just might need to wait a little bit. And I'm sure you all know the rule that it's exactly for the advanced part, $1,000 per employee that you claim.
Great, thank you. The other question we have here is from Mark Roxy, and Mark asked, does that mean, the information you gave earlier, does that mean that the PPP usage will be extended through the end of the year? I guess
Yes.
Past that June 30 date.
Yeah. Past the June, now you got me confused. You said PPP or PUA?
PPP he's asking about.
Okay,
he's asking,
yeah. So
right, through the end of the year. I'm presuming what Mark means is the end of the calendar year.
Yes.
Right, because it was to June 30th originally, the end of many of our fiscal years.
Exactly. Well, there are two things about that June 30th. June 30th is when you had to apply by.
Okay.
And you had to, this is where they're not very clear in their ruling. It's really annoying, but at least they got the money out fast. That's the only forgivable part about this whole thing, is that it's not clear whether you, what is clear is as soon as you get the money, you have 8 weeks, the clock starts ticking of when you
that's what Mark is saying.
But the other part that's clear is that you have to apply by June 30th. So some people have interpreted that to mean you have to use it by June 30th. But the real answer is you have to use it 8 weeks, clock starts ticking from the moment it's deposited into your checking account. Now, what this HEROES Act is proposing is that it do two things. It extend the application period and extend when you can use the money, which would be very helpful for a lot of groups that we're going to completely skip the summer and hope to open up in the fall and then rehire people. But it's not law yet. You can't count on it. The other thing that is very cool about this HEROES Act is Congress wants to lift the regulation that the Treasury Department imposed of saying that for it to be forgiven, 75% had to be used for payroll and 25% for overhead. In the HEROES Act, they eliminate that requirement. So there's a lot of possible good things here. Lobby and help us get good grassroots lobbying to get these things passed, because it's not law until it is. I would like to add one other URL that I posted to the chat, and that's our arts funding tracker. We are looking to ask as many arts groups and individual artists who have tapped any type of CARES Act money, whether it's just the IRS rebate money, or it's the PPP, or it's the pandemic unemployment, because we want to be able to make a case to Congress very similar to what Anne-Marie was talking about, and that is the need for our groups is much bigger than the amount of money that they've been able to tap. And we need facts to be able to do that. And so that's why we're pushing this research agenda to be able to capture this survey information. We will not disclose your personal information. We just want to aggregate the amount of money.
And we featured the tracker in last week's webinar, and your table as well updated. So we keep that table updated on our website.
Oh, good. And I never changed the URL, so it's always the same URL, but just keep noticing the date on the very top. That will tell you when it was last changed. And I can tell you that I average making an update twice a week.
So just there is another question here. In the HEROES Act proposed, is there any proposed change for applying contract workers to the PPP? Jonathan's asking about it. Has there been any change of applying
No,
contracts?
they
So I don't think
still
there
want
hasn't been any change.
There hasn't been any change. They still want contract workers to apply directly to PPP instead of being included in the employment numbers within an organization's application.
And Mark is asking again, so how do we lobby on that? How do we advocate on that? You know, Mark, you keep doing what you're doing. Stay tuned, stay engaged, both with us at ArtPride, within the work that Nina's doing with the Arts Action Fund, but obviously all that is happening together. This is something that, you know, we're pushing for the reduction of that limitation, as well as the extension of the use of the PPP certainly helps our members in terms of seasonality and Nina, to your point, what their costs are. So, I mean, that is, you know, that is what we're pushing for together. So, thank you.
Yeah, and to give you a sense, we think, you know, we're always glad that we can get a few millions of dollars into the NEA and things like that. But I have to tell you, the funds that arts organizations are getting through SBA, artists are getting through pandemic unemployment, are in the billions of dollars. This has been the lifeline for the arts community, and we need to recognize that larger factor. We are beyond, you know, just the arts agencies, though they're extremely important, but really it's these larger economic relief programs that we've been able to help make arts organizations and individual gig artists eligible for. That was the game changer.
And then in the chat, Steve Frederick had a question about the EDA loans and if any of the HERO funding will be going towards our state EDA loans. I know in a webinar this week, Tim Sullivan from EDA said that there was $10 million in the EDA program for the small business emergency loans. They had a request for $250 million. And they had 10, but he said they're looking to replenish that fund. So, any other questions?
Oh, wait. We did get one more. Oh, wait, now they're popping up. Okay, so Steve asked a question, but Nina already answered that, so I'll right back to him. And then Jonathan said, I've made sure to tell our legislators, both state and federal, that we've received PPP monies. Do you recommend that all arts organizations do the same? I think that's maybe a question for you, Anne-Marie.
Well, that's the question for Nina, of course. I mean, I think,
yeah.
You know, I think they want to know what's going on. They want to know if you're having trouble. You know, I mean, this is what their job is. They're representing you. So if you are having trouble getting your PPP, if you, let them know. And if you've gotten it, yes, let them know. If you're having trouble with the deadline, let them know. Those are the things that they need to hear in order for these, you know, for these legislation to be relevant to what the needs of the public are.
So Steve, I see your question. If I could answer Steve's question.
Yeah, I was going to say it isn't a repeat. I reread it. Go ahead.
Yeah. So Steve, I have also asked this question that he has posed, and that is, what about the loan portion of emergency injury disaster loans, EIDL? Right now, they have just been processing the advances. What's happening to loan portions? Because a lot of money is going towards that too. And I have just yesterday, I literally posed the same question to our outside counsel, Brownstein Hyatt, to get an answer from SBA directly, because in my office hours that I do daily, again, for the last 6 weeks, I've been talking to a lot of people who have gotten EIDL advances. And consistently, I keep asking them, have they followed up with any invitation for you to also take out a low interest loan through the SBA? And consistently across the board, nobody has gotten a loan invitation. They don't even get paperwork. You just get a deposit in your checking account that says US Treasury. You have to kind of figure out, okay, was this my IRS rebate or was this EIDL? Literally no paperwork.
You count ArtPride to that that group there. No notice. we got an email after the deposit that was like, you'll get an email if your status changes. And the money had already been deposited.
Right. And there's no mention of the loan. So, Steve, you were asking a timely question. I'm on it, but I just don't have the answer yet.
All right, any other questions?
Is there another wave of PPP funding for the arts? And what is the New Jersey Arts Council's position on the funding available to arts groups and when the Arts Council will be weighing in on funding? How does the federal funds affect our local groups?
Okay,
Like,
so to do the PPP part first, and I can try to answer the second part. Well, I think Nina already addressed PPP part earlier. As far as the arts,
$100 billion left, and if HEROES Act passes, at least 25% of that is going to be reserved just for nonprofits to be able to apply, and they're going to lift the rule on the 500-person employee for only nonprofits.
all right, so as far as the Arts Council goes, they received close to $500,000 in NEA funding from the first wave. My understanding is that they're working on the guidelines right now. What's happened, how that money is going to be distributed. They want to move it quickly. As you may know, yesterday's legislative session, there was a vote also on furloughing state employees. So Allison may, start to see some diminution of her staff over the next several weeks. So they're working on it really hard to get that money out as quickly as possible.
But if they get the HEROES money, it might help in getting them back off furlough and back onto employment.
Which is exactly, I think Adam was in a call earlier with the Senate president, and he was saying that they believe that that money will be a big help.
Yeah, and I think that from the standpoint of the question of how do the federal funds affect our local groups, that's the bridge there. So the general idea of the federal government supporting state and county and local, that's how the gap that the governor is talking about, the $10 billion gap that Anne Marie discussed earlier, that's how that gets filled, which makes sure that the appropriation to the State Arts Council continues at the level it should. And then that's how that continues to support local groups, whether it's directly from the Arts Council or through the county re-granting program. So, that's how
we're all connected.
All connected.
All
and that's
connected.
it. And that doesn't even mention, by the way, how many groups in New Jersey that are funded directly by the NEA. ArtPride included, on any given year.
Probably
So,
doesn't.
Right.
I have a question, Adam, if I could ask the group, and that is, I'm trying to collect information from various different states on how gig artists are doing with applying successfully for pandemic unemployment. I know it just opened up a few weeks ago, probably April 28th, like a lot of other states. Have you had success, and what struggles or obstacles did you face? If anyone could add them to the chat room, if you don't want to take up time now to do it. But I really want to know, in my office hours, I think, Anne Marie, you're doing such a good job. I haven't gotten many people from New Jersey. So I don't know what's happening in New Jersey on pandemic unemployment.
Yeah, it's very recent. So we had problems in the Department of Labor with staffing, and they're using COBOL and age-old computers to get things moving. So there's been a lot of pressure on the Department of Labor. So this is just starting to see some ripple effect. But we might be able to do a poll on this call, and we can certainly track that in the future.
That would be great. I'm really looking to hear of any kind of obstacles. There's this issue of hybrid workers in California going on. Let me just give you a heads up. California is the only one I know that's interpreting it this way. But if you are like a lot of gig workers, you get maybe you have multiple sources of income. And one of them might be an employment job you get a little bit of W-2 money. I don't know whether it's working in an office, a restaurant, or whatever it is. You get a little bit of W-2 money, but then you also get 1099 money from some contract work. And then others, you just do sales of your artwork or something like that. And then it's all compiled together on your Schedule C of your business income. Well, in California, they are only looking at if you do W-2, they're only looking at you as a one-dimensional person and only your W-2 work. And a lot of times it's the least amount of money that you make, and they're not qualifying them. We're now working with the unions in California, especially to get that change. And California is starting to see that they're interpreting it in a very weird way. But, you know, California is a leader in the country, and other states might see it as an opportunity to lessen the amount of payout that they do on unemployment by interpreting it the same way they do. So I'm looking to see if that kind of trend is happening.
Hey, Nina, as you know, the first round of NEA funding, the NEA has kind of restricted to those that have already received NEA funding. In the next round coming through, you know, Heroes, do you think that's going to change, or do you think it might stay the same?
You know, the first round they got 75 million. In this round, it's only 10 million for NEA and 10 million for the NEH. You know, they have a lot of abilities to do a lot of different things. It is a lot of work to, I can't imagine them opening it up to more applicants for a couple reasons. They still have to deal with an OMB rule that they have to pre-vet the financial viability and solidity of any organization that applies. And that is a long time it takes. And so as a result, that's why they chose to work with those that have been pre-vetted over the last 3 years. It would slow down the amount of money that they can get out by 6 months probably. With only 10 million being added, I suspect if I were in their mind, I suspect I would just fund more of the applicants that did apply. From what I understand, there's a 3 to 1 ratio, 3 times the amount of money and number of grants that they can give out have been submitted. So if I were them, I would just make it easy, make it fast, and just be able to award more grants to the people who did apply. But
So,
that's just me.
So Jim's put a poll up. Have you applied for PUA? So
That's so cool.
yeah, if you can quickly answer that, we'll see if anybody on here.
Jim's on top of it. We try. Carrie Mather asks, if you have applied and received a PPP, can you apply again if more money is approved through the HEROES Act? Is that part of what's being proposed? It's
No. The HEROES Act, I wish it did. The HEROES Act at this moment doesn't do 2 things. It doesn't replenish with more money, and it doesn't allow you to get a second loan after the 8-week period has extended at this time. Of course, we can all lobby the Senate to make that rule happen.
All right, do we have results on that? Well, there you go. Have you applied? 95% have said no, 5% have said yes.
And I'm curious, is it because you are primarily organizations, representing organizations on this call?
I think so. And I think it's also because, you know, a lot of the employees are covered through PPP too, you know, so.
Right. So,
right.
If in the future, Anne-Marie, if you'd like to do one of these kind of calls that is targeted more for your individual artists, I'd be happy to come back and we can do something.
Awesome. All right, I want to thank you, Nina. Thanks so much for your time today.
Okay.
We really appreciate it. Have a good weekend.
Thank you.
Be
Bye.
well.
All right, let's see.
You got more for us, I think, Anne-Marie, right?
I'm gonna try, yeah. All right, so this is, let's hope this works, because it was like, I was having trouble with my screen before. Let's try it again. All right. All right, so we will have this up on the, all right, okay. See if it works now. Okay, that Americans for the Arts policy priorities, we'll have that connected to the resources from today's webinar. Just want to let you know that we are thinking about reopening, and I know we were going to focus this conversation mostly on that, but then we had this opportunity with Nina and we didn't want to pass it up. We've been thinking really, really hard about this, and New Jersey's way behind other states. Actually, today's New York Times was an interesting article. A concert happening in Arkansas was stopped by the Department of Health in Arkansas, the cease and desist order. things are happening in Missouri, things are happening in Wisconsin. We are way behind, but it doesn't mean that we can't prepare. So we've been looking at things that arts groups need. And when, we'll, again, share this and looking for input from you as to what arts groups need. Earlier this week, the Theater Alliance had a really, really good webinar with Dr. Stuart Weiss talking about event management safety. The link is at the bottom. Please go back. If you didn't have a chance to listen to this, go back and listen to it. It's really, really valuable. And I know the Theater Alliance will be having future webinars as well. The Event Safety Alliance Reopening Guide, we will post this on our page as well. That's available. It's very detailed, but it's also another resource for you. And we've been also looking at recommendations, and some of these recommendations have been forwarded over to Evie Colbert. I need to make a correction. She is the president of the Montclair Film Board. I don't know, I think I had an error in the way her title was earlier. Bob Feinberg is the chair and founder of the board. So we've been, forwarding our concerns, and these will be listed again as well. Things about, one size does not fit all. How do we get access to PPE and sanitation products? Is there a lead time on reopening? What about non-essential employees? When can they start? When can they be put back on payroll at all? Is there a method for dispute resolution? What are the best practices advice, and how do you resolve them, again, from local to state? What will be the limits on guest audience sizes, depending upon certain things? What are the liability issues that we're dealing with? And of course, the revenue issues. Making sure that there is consistent revenue to keep everybody alive so that they can thrive. We've been thinking about other questions, what are the pitfalls of opening early, maintaining audience trust? Who has a 2-year plan? If you're going to open, close, in the fall because an outbreak occurs, and can you reopen again? Do you need capital improvements? Do you need to make additional ADA entrance and egress for disabled patrons? And who's thinking about the drive-in theater concert option? So I don't know, Adam, if anybody has questions or or ideas or suggestions, I'd like you to, please make sure you let us know what you're thinking about. We're hearing a lot of groups not ready to open until the fall, and perhaps not the fall, maybe into next year. So we want to hear from everybody.
So there are a couple questions here, and we'll do our best to answer all of them as I'm like typing and talking at the same time. So to your point, Anne-Marie, we are talking to a lot of groups. I know Mark Roxy from Roxy Ballet was speaking in the chat group, and everybody can read what Mark wrote. But the communities we represent, all the different types of arts facilities and arts groups of different shapes and sizes in different parts of the state certainly present unique challenges. Mark speaks obviously very much so to the dance community, and we've been close in touch with our friends at Dance New Jersey and a lot of the dance groups that are members about their unique challenges. So we did have a question here, which is a good one. So it says, would be willing to advocate and lobby to extend the use of life loans. Please let me know how we can help. 8 weeks doesn't necessarily help when activities are shut down. So for those of us that are new to the call, Anne-Marie, how can people stay connected to ArtPride and advocate? How are we coordinating that? I know a lot of the folks on the phone are well versed in that, but for those that are new and want to participate and want to be involved, how can they do that?
Yeah, one of the things I would suggest that's kind of a sidebar, but at the same time, it's really important, is this week we updated the statistics on Art Matters, which is the collaboration with the State Arts Council. And the data that's there is Arts Council final report data from fiscal year 19 plugged into the Americans for the Arts economic activity calculator. and it's available statewide and on a county level. So as you are basically lobbying or talking to legislators about any one particular issue, you can go back to Art Matters and find and reference what the current economic, pre-COVID economic impact locally and statewide is. And that way, you know, you're drumming home the message that this is an active field that returns a lot, not only emotionally and psychologically, but economically to our residents and our visitors. And, you know, we're in a position right now where this is the question I have and this is the help I need. So hopefully that's helpful.
And even if it's as simple as, if you haven't had a chance to go to artpridenj.org and go to the Arts Action section and make sure your email is in there. I mean, if you found this webinar, hopefully you're already on our email list, but that's where our action alerts will come from, to make sure you're on that list.
So there's a good question about, you know, and I think this is a question on everybody's mind. The biggest question is more of a practical one. If we need to maintain a social distance of 6 feet and you have a theater with, let's say, 500 seats, how are we to break even if we have to maintain 50% capacity or leave every other seat row unsellable? So the one thing I'm going to actually encourage everyone at this point is to really think differently. Don't think about business as pre-COVID. Think about new ways of doing business moving forward, and also thinking about outside of your particular venue. And not only what your venue might need in terms of capital needs, because some of that money might be available on a local level to make accommodations, but thinking about outdoors, thinking about different venues, and thinking about connecting with other sectors, social sectors, social services, parks and recreations, you know, outside of the venue that you consider home. And then, yeah, union rules. I know that they're called, we call them external forces. You know, union rules will make a huge difference. Actually, again, today's paper was all about Disney canceling Frozen, you know, and off Broadway, and now Disney's weighing in through Actors Equity about the need for additional support because nonprofit theater contributes to Broadway. You know, the talent goes from nonprofits to Broadway. So they're recognizing the value right now. And sometimes those bigger voices get heard before ours do. As a museum, social distancing should not be difficult to control for museum visits, but we are also looking to how best to manage events such as openings, receptions, and other gatherings that have been an important part of our revenues. Obviously, we want to do the right thing and appreciate any advice on how to create in-person, online, hybrid events. That's from Sarah Unger. And I know Sarah deals with Ellerslie in Trenton, the city museum. So museums around the country are some of the first places to open. In Texas, they've already opened. In other states, they're opening as well. And so we're looking to our partners in other states to see how they're able to do this. And we can also share some of that information with our colleagues here in New Jersey. Broadway League considering pay-per-view stream option, and Broadway's looking into subscription-based web platform. I know it's not the same experience for live theater in New Jersey, but can we possibly partner with streaming services to continue to produce shows, but have a subscription-based model that can allow theater goers to feel safe? I know Eventbrite offers, this is from Kevin. And I know, you know, one of our policy recommendations is to help optimize the environment for high quality streaming for arts groups, you know, because you want to make sure also that you're able to have access to the equipment that's necessary to be able to provide services that you want to charge for. So that's one of the things as well. There's a lot of questions. Anything else? I'm not sure. Anybody creating guidelines for social distancing and safety for the staff, contractors, and volunteers at cultural organizations? That's from Anonymous. I'd go back to the event safety relief guide, Safety Alliance reopening guide. They have a lot of guidelines in there. Quite frankly, everybody's afraid to provide guidelines that are actually too specific because of liability issues. They don't want to be the source of telling anyone that this is the way you should do it and then get accused of saying something that's wrong. So it's an issue, but this is very helpful, as well as going back to the Theater Alliance's webinar, which was really helpful as well. Any interaction with real estate developers. Rutgers Center for Real Estate might be a good resource. Land and space use will be shifting, at least for now. So interestingly enough, this is from Cindy Fleischer, the committee, not the high level committee, but the lower level committee that the governor has for recovery, the 2 representatives that were mentioned there from the arts field, all the rest are real estate developers. And so I'm hoping and I'm knowing that our 2 representatives will be interacting with them, and because it's all about venues too. I don't know, Adam, you think we're done here?
So I think the rest of these are actually just specific questions about facilities, yeah, and suggestions about it. Yeah, I think we're good. So I'm sorry that to a couple folks here, we may not be able to answer the questions through live, but we are 10 minutes over, and I can start to see people starting to drop off.
Yeah.
But what I will say again is, if you haven't been there yet, artpridenj.org, please go there. I mean, my contact information is there. Anne-Marie's contact information is there. So if you have specific questions, suggestions, stories, you feel like you're missing out on information, that's what we're here for. And so we really hope that you're connecting with us there as well. Don't forget, we have our Jersey Arts Marketers webinar next week, which I think is approaching about 300 participants. It might be over that. So make sure to sign up for that as well. Did I miss anything, Anne-Marie?
No, I think you got it all. It's like now basically telling everybody to stay safe and stay well. We are not planning a webinar next Friday. We're going to take a break for the holiday. It actually is Memorial Day weekend coming up. So I want to thank everybody for being here again today. We were lucky to catch Nina. We'll make sure that her chart is available to everybody along with everything else. One last thing is I know Corey's also getting submissions from folks for an arts and health video that will become part of Art Matters. So if you haven't seen the request, please contact Corey K. Rife at artpridenj.org. She's pulling all that information together so that we can post that on the Art Matters page.
For sure, yeah. That artmattersnj.org page, is really about the public value for the arts, and that's a co-sponsored project with the State Arts Council. So it's a great public-private partnership that really puts into really tangible numbers about the economic impact of the arts. And since those numbers are brand spanking new, and the ArtPride staff and the Arts Council staff worked so hard to get that up there, please go check that out. We're going to have more coming out around Art Matters in the next few weeks and months as well. So wish everybody a safe and healthy and happy Memorial Day weekend coming up next week. And everybody have a great weekend this weekend. And as you know, we're here if you need us. So take care. Thanks again for coming.
Thank you.